Greetings, friends. Operational situation at the front on the 1st of March. So spring has begun. A new decade has begun. Well, actually, we will start with the agenda from the front, what is happening now. Then let's talk about the news background. We will start with you from the Bakhmut direction from Ivanovo. We have recently talked a lot with you about attacks from the north, from the area of the Popovskoye Tract, and the enemy still managed to advance in this sector of the front, in the direction of Ivanovo proper, and east of Ivanovo itself. So a red zone has been added in the northeast of the settlement. Let's go through the changes right away. In a section up to 1 kilometer wide, they advanced to a depth of 450 meters. Having taken full control of one of the strongholds of the east of Ivanovo, and north of the northeast of Ivanovo, there is also another stronghold, that is, 2 strongholds in total. Now the enemy is naturally conducting assault operations, as they said a lot in previous broadcasts about the vector of his attacks, on the intersection of Sedovoye Street with Kirov Street. What does it give him? In fact, the attacks that were north of Ivanovo, and we also pointed the vector in the southwest. Not only in the south direction, and certainly not in the southeast, we focused on the southwest. What was not given? They made it possible for the Russian troops to take, in any case, if not physically under the short-term perspective of time, then under partial fire control of a section of the road T0504. And actually now they are trying to implement all this, because there are attacks not only where we showed the red zone. There are also a number of attacks north, in the direction of Baba Mountain, that is, the vector is still preserved, from the Popovsky Tract. The APU has the ability to repel these attacks, despite the fact that they are quite serious, I mean artillery. Because there were a lot of reports about the artillery famine, which really exists, but now the APU has such an opportunity. Because according to the news background, there is still such an important detail in the news that it seems like Europe has reached a consensus in the purchase of those 800,000 artillery ammunition. And actually now the APU can allow to strengthen the work artillery, let's say, use more ammunition. Because it is already likely to happen, the purchase of those 800,000. But as they say, time will tell. In any case, now we see effective work, including counter-battery, on, in principle, the entire section of the front. As for the eastern part, the attacks are still going in the direction of 70 years of October Street, Artyom Lane. So a number of Russian media resources noted that allegedly Russian troops from Sedovoye Street advanced. But this is not the best place to advance, because those who painted this area in red, they did not take into account the topographic component. Russian troops definitely did not swim here. They are conducting assault operations in the direction of these streets and Artyom Lane, but from Sedovoye Street. That is where it intersects with the intersection with Zapodnaya Street. That is, approximately in this area, the main emphasis is now being placed by the enemy. This is the situation we have in Ivanovo. Along Kleshivka, north of the Kleshayevsky fortified area, there was an attempt on the part of the Russian troops to cling, to gain a foothold on the outskirts of the forest plantation, for which we talked a lot, which would have given in due time when the assault actions of the fortified area were carried out, would have made it possible to take partial fire control of a number of logistics routes. Well, in general, now the enemy is conducting more, I would say, of a distracting nature of the action here. The rolls were repelled by their small numbers, so they do not record any changes. But this is actually the same vector of attacks of the Chernobyl Garden Association, not only to the west and southwest, but also actually to the south of it. Attempts are also being made to improve the tactical situation. But here again, a fairly large distance of the gray zone has been passed. We also need to talk about this, because the enemy attacks very much. It is clear that now it is small groups, but naturally it can later result in something unpleasant, as in the Ivanovsky district. We turn to the Avdeevka direction of Burdik. So yesterday, there was a lot of misinformation, as you remember. I told you that Russian assenters are starting to draw too much of what is not there. There are no visual confirmations. There are no official messages, so we are leaving a lot for clarification, because there was conflicting information, including on the settlement of Burdik. So, as a result, in the area of the settlement of Burdik, it was possible to throw back Russian troops. To a depth of up to 300 meters, a gray zone was added. They carried out assault operations in fact in the central part, and actually there is a geolinking of drone footage, but they managed to repel this attack and counterattack. Therefore, the situation today looks something like this. Now they are making a big bet, not from the north and from the east, but from the south. Well, you can also talk about the southeast, but here in fact, from the south, more pressure comes from the typical side. As for Orlovka, we do not record any new changes. Yesterday there were also reports that the Russian troops allegedly managed to advance, and very deeply, but there was no visual confirmation of this information again. Moreover, as you can see, for the third day, there have been reports that Burdik and Thin have allegedly come under Russian control. But even the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation does not declare anything of the kind. Well, plus visual confirmations, as for example we saw in Swallow on Stepov and Severny, we do not see from the Russian troops. Therefore, the situation is about the same as I show you. This is what it is. Thin, there were a number of attacks. It was possible to repel and even throw back about 120 meters from the forest belt passing south of the settlement, parallel to the settlement of Thin. Therefore, here again yesterday, there were a number of statements from the Russian troops that representatives of the Russian troops, that they are doing very well, are not advancing, but in fact, there was an effective counterattack of the armed forces of Ukraine. And we will talk about this later, but in the context of the work. According to Pervomaysky, there was a message that Russian troops had advanced up to 100 meters. But this situation still remains to be clarified. Approximately occupied this intersection from the streets of Proshet Ravnev to Voroshilev, leading. The situation remains to be clarified, because this is where they attacked, but there is no confirmation that they were able to gain a foothold. So we are moving on to Krasnogorovka, the city of Krasnogorskovka, the Kurikov direction. So as you remember, we added a gray zone and a red one in the area of the Trudovskaya mine, a gray one on the southern outskirts and the southern part of the settlement. Then, it was reported about the third assault, that it was completely possible to dislodge the Russian troops and stabilize the situation. And actually today, we see that this is the case, although representatives of Russian media resources deny it a lot, but they can no longer confirm their further presence. And moreover, the fighters of the third assault have already published yesterday only 2 fresh videos from this area, which actually confirms that it is under their full control. Therefore, we do not record any new changes here. Novomikhailovka, the South Donetsk sector of the front, managed to push the Russian troops, but we will say more. Not so much south of Novomikhailovka as northwest of the settlement of Sladkaya. It means that here along the Salty Beam, they pushed down to 700 meters in the area. Russian troops were thrown back. Therefore, this is the situation. And another very important point is the work. By the way, my throat is one of the reasons, including why I didn't broadcast yesterday. There were questions. Very ill. Now for work on. I told you that we will talk about it in the key, together with Avdeevka. Why? Because I look at Russian centers, and authoritative ones, and let's say that over the last, I would even say a year, they have served minimal disinformation. They have again returned to disinformation, as it was in the Kherson direction, when the 2022 DFU conducted a counteroffensive. So they draw that the center is occupied by Russian troops. We have been drawing a completely different picture with you for several days on the basis of Aspen analysis, geolinking of drone frames. And today, the Russian side published fresh new footage from an enemy drone. I basically did not rub them over the watermark or something so that you are interested. Find it, look at it. That is, not a throw-in, so to speak. They are attacking south of Workin, on the fortified area located south of Workin, which confirms that there are no Russian troops on any, even in the southern part, or on any southern outskirts. They are completely knocked out. The situation is relatively stable. Moreover, a clarification was added naturally in our fortified area, because based on the geolinking of drone frames again, the APU completely occupied not only the entire forest belt and part of the fortified area, but also the entire fortified area, as can already be seen from the result. Therefore, the situation today has been adjusted, taking into account drone footage. The APU has made some more progress here. This is just the same for you to understand the big picture. Naturally, the main goal of the information war now is to undermine morale even more. He really has unpleasant moments after Avdeevka. We will say that it is not at the highest level, but there is also no such thing as what Russian media resources present. I mean Orlovka, I mean Burdik, thin, well, and in this case also work. This is the situation we have for the 1st of March.